The man who became a world champion at 56 years old. I know you probably have a lot of questions. How can a 50-year-old become a boxing champion? That's physically impossible. I mean, father's time catches up to everybody, right? Right? The oldest champion that we've seen was George Foreman in his 40s, I believe. And some people will even argue that that was a fluke. But 56 years old, I can see some people already saying whatever steroids this guy was taking, Stipe Miocic should be taking the same steroids against John Jones to have a fighting chance. But no, the man, the legend that I'm going to tell you guys about did not do the steroids. He won in another way. I've always wondered, ever since I started fighting, what is true strength? What does it mean to be the strongest man in the world? And is that even possible? I would have thought in the past that being the strongest man in the world is a possibility. But then when I started fighting, I realized that it's an illusion. It's not possible to be the strongest man in the world. Maybe you can be the strongest man in the world at a specific time for 15, 25 minutes maybe. But then someone could just beat you when you're not training because you just got rusty. So what does it mean? Also, everybody gets old at some point eventually. And then what's the point of accumulating all these techniques, all this strength, when eventually, when you get old, a lot of people will be able to dethrone you? Then I thought to myself, this fighting ability, this physical ability that we have is not what truly makes us the strongest. It's not true power, is it? Or not the entirety of it. But then I realized something. True strength does not only come from the physical body. It comes from different places. True power is intangible. And there are many, many fights that are outside of the ring, outside of the octagon, that require a lot of power. Most of the fights in our lives, the most important fights in our lives, are not with the fists. And this is when the protagonist of this video comes in. Meet Rubin Hurricane Carter. You see, Hurricane Rubin Carter was around at the same time as Muhammad Ali. So you understand the political context. There's a lot of racism, there is segregation, but black people are starting to have a certain sense of identity and, most importantly, pride. And now they're starting to push back. Understanding this is really important to understand the story of Rubin Carter and what made him so great. You see, Rubin Carter grew up in a rough environment, and that rough environment made him tough. He was allegedly almost molested by a police officer, and he defended himself by stabbing him, which eventually led him to go into a juvenile center, which he escaped from. Well, this little misadventure with the law, the authority, would cause a problem in the future for Rubin Carter, because they will be on his case eventually. So Rubin Carter runs away from that juvenile facility. Eventually he goes to Europe, enrolls in the army, becomes pretty successful in the army, comes back. Guess what happened? The police, they said, "Oh boy, before you could run away, get back in here." So he goes back to prison, changes his life around, and decides, okay, I'm going to lock in and put my stuff together. So he decides to channel all of his energy into fighting, because he was fighting when he was in the army and he was quite good at it. So Rubin becomes quite popular. He starts winning fights and he becomes a contender for the middleweight championship. He fights for the middleweight championship one time and loses a close fight. Some people call it a robbery. I was not there. But you see, the police, they don't like Rubin. They've got a bone to pick with him, remember? And they see that he's successful and they want to do something. They want to make sure that this guy pays for what he allegedly did to their officer and stabbing him and everything. So what do? They frame him for the murder of 3 people. A murder that was apparently racially motivated. They go to the witness. The witness says, no, that's not the guy. But you see, the police sometimes, they don't want to hear none of that. So they put Rubin in prison anyways, with a life sentence. Now that you're all caught up, this is where the real fight starts. See, when somebody takes your freedom, when you go to prison, you're at the mercy of the system entirely. You don't have a name anymore. You got a serial number. You can't. You're bound by these walls. This is when you realize that Rubin Carter, the Hurricane, was a true warrior. When he arrived at the prison, they gave him his uniform, but he said, no, I'm a free man, so I will not wear that uniform, because he understood something. What Rubin understood was that even though you may have authority on somebody physically, you can't have authority on them on a spiritual level. And by him refusing the prison uniform, he was denying them. He was denying them the power. He was in power. He said, okay, you don't want to wear the uniform, go to solitary confinement. He goes to the solitary confinement, which aims to break your spirit. He goes through it and comes out and still doesn't want to wear the uniform. Eventually, they ended up giving him some dusty pajama. Said, okay, as long as I'm not wearing that uniform, I'm fine with it. And at that time, he took the power from them. Even though he was a captive, he took power. You see, one thing that makes a great fighter is understanding the situation and what tools you have. And Rubin understood that his ability to say no was his true power in this situation. The ability to refuse was what made him powerful. Rubin Carter decided that denying them was not enough, but he was also going to empower himself in the best way that you could when you're an inmate, which is empowering your mind. He started educating himself, reading about different topics ranging from law to politics to metaphysics. And he became such a scholar. He became a scholar, a poet, a writer. He started working on his own case thanks to the knowledge that he gathered from studying law. He even wrote a book, an autobiography, and put it out in the world so that people can see it, so that he had the chance to show his side of the story. And little did he know that his work would inspire people and change some people's lives. Who would have thought that someone, an inmate that was having a life sentence, that was trapped behind 4 walls, stripped of all of the basic rights, basic freedoms, could have such an impact on the world? This book was going to do more for him than just have an impact on the outside world, because this book would be the key to his freedom. You see, one of the many people Rubin Carter's book inspired was a boy called Lizra Martin, a boy from Brooklyn. The boy was from the streets, obviously, and the future was not looking too bright for him. However, by luck, he read Rubin Carter's book, and that inspired him. You see, Lizra Martin had been adopted by some Canadian people, and with their help, they started working on the case. Many people had tried before, but the boy was determined to help Rubin Carter, because Rubin Carter helped him find himself through his words, through the book. Rubin Carter had not only empowered himself, he had empowered somebody else that felt like they were in a hopeless situation. You see, Rubin had been fighting this case For almost 20 years. For almost 20 years, his appeal kept on getting rejected, despite the pile of evidence that he had to prove his innocence. So Rubin and his friends decided to swing for the fence and go directly to the Supreme Court. And eventually, in 1985, his conviction got overturned. And Carter was a free man. You see, Carter got imprisoned in the prime of his career. And he clearly could not go back to fighting at 56 years old because he did not have the ability to do so, to compete with these young guys. But at 56 years old, in 1993, the WBC awarded him a championship belt because of the fight he had put for his life. This type of fight is tougher than any fight that anyone could have had in the ring. And not only did he fight for himself, but without realizing, he fought for others and empowered other people. His work dramatically altered certain people's life for the better. And he's got a legacy that will last forever throughout his book, throughout his story. And that made me realize something. True power is when you have the ability to change someone's heart, to change their mind, to change how they think. True power is when you're so strong from within that people cannot break your spirit, even if you're imprisoned, even if you are at their mercy physically, they cannot break your spirit. That's why Muhammad Ali was so great, because he's cut from that cloth. They're both cut from that cloth. Wouldn't break. They would not break under pressure, and they wouldn't abandon their principle. How many champions, modern champions, can you say have this level of integrity and inner fortitude? How many champions in this modern age have the ability to change your heart, to make you want to change your life? If you put Floyd Mayweather in those conditions, I don't think he will do great. If you put Tank Davis in those situations, I don't think he will do great. If you put Canelo in those situations, I don't think he will do great. And the lesson from Rubin Carter's story is that something may happen to you, and you may think that it's bad, it's a bad thing, but really and truly, if he did not get imprisoned, he wouldn't have had such an impact and such a legacy. He would just be another great boxer, and that's it. And he probably wouldn't even be a champion. But now everybody knows and remember Rubin Hurricane Carter. To be more precise, everybody will remember Dr. Rubin Hurricane Carter. So yeah guys, it's your favorite YouTuber, Tenamsco. If you like this video, you can click here, or just go on my profile, subscribe, and there's much more videos like this. And also check the link in the description to help support the people of Palestine. They don't want me to talk about it. Please do show support. And yes, until next time.
قالوا إنها وعد نحن عصبة الأسد فأتاهم زحفنا زائلون للأبد